Cold iron, frozen ground, and endless war. Today we'll be painting the walls of Dresden, my winter-themed Konflikt 47 army. The idea behind this army was simply two things. The first being my unending love for hazard stripes, and secondly I just wanted to start a winter army. In this guide we'll be covering the infantry, the armour, as well as some chaff units. These chaff units were built with the free sprue received from Warlord, as well as some leftover heads from the Style Trooper. We'll go over chipping, hazard stripes, as well as weathering. If you like what you see here, stick around. So the first thing we need to do is prime all our minis in Vallejo's German Field Grey. Once the primer is set, we need to give it a good coat of Vallejo's chipping medium. This can be applied via airbrush or just by a standard brush. If you are putting it down with a standard brush though, make sure it's a pretty thick coat. And once the chipping medium dries, we're going to coat the mini in white. I'm using Citadel Colours White Scar. Once the primer is dried, take some more mortar and apply it with a brush. It all depends on how much chipping medium you use. The more chipping medium, the easier it is for the paint to come off. If you don't want large chunks of paint removed and you'd rather have skinny little lines, then use something like this terrain tool or a pair of pliers and gently scratch away. We're going to try and focus on areas that will see the most wear and tear, so that'll be corners or where joints would touch. Also, if you just want to add some battle damage, some scratched backpacks, scratched boots, go ahead. Chipping medium can stay active for up to 24 hours. The longer you leave it though, the harder it is to come off. So now we're going to paint the rest of the model. If you're doing hazard stripes, I'd recommend using some Imperial Fist contrast paint and just marking out the areas where you want those stripes to go. If you want a more vibrant yellow, base coat the area first in pink. But this is fine for me, I'm happy with the result. Don't worry if you get some yellow paint over the edges, we can just touch that up with some white paint after. If you're interested in using a free sprue that Warlord gave you, such as the Hair Winter Infantry, simply coat them in German Field Grey, paint the boots and the hands in black, as well as the leathers. I've used leftover Style Trooper heads, just to give them that futuristic vibe. I haven't dedicated too much time to them here, just because they're an optional extra. Post-production mama here. When you prime the necked album, make sure you do it in a Xenophore highlight. That's a black prime base coat, and then a top-down spray of white from above. Anyway, back to the video. So if you watched my previous video, you'll know that I'm turning these into mutated Hitler youth.
Who's Hitler?
All we need to do is give the shirts a coat of Zandri dust. You may have to do this in a few thin coats just to get a nice finish. Once we're happy with the shirt, we're going to be going over with Black Legion contrast paint for the trousers. You could do this in a standard black, but this just goes on a lot faster. Once you're happy with the base coat on the trousers and the shirt, it's time to do the leathers. We're going to use Rhinox hide. I'm going to be painting any leftover satchels or Panzerfausts in Militarum green. You can use any standard green. Again, this is purely just for speed. If you're planning on putting any decals on your minis, it'd probably be a good time to do it now. So we need to coat any areas that we're thinking of doing in decal fix. Give the area a nice coat. If you're doing a panel, do the entire thing just to make sure there's no colour difference. Then, just pick up your transfer sheet.
What does a common soldier want with a transfer sheet?
Why, my lord? I was going to wipe my bum with it.
Then just apply your transfers. Easier said than done. To move on to the hazard stripes, I'm using Tamiya's 2 to 3mm masking tape. Try and leave nice even gaps. You can even use the rivets to line up. Once the tape's on, simply just paint the area black. Some of the black may leak through, but don't worry, we can cover this up with just a standard yellow. We're painting the vehicles exactly the same as the armour. Just keep an eye open for any metallic bits that we're going to paint in when we do the weapons. Unfortunately, with the infantry, we're going to have to freehand it. Don't be intimidated by this, as it's only a small area. Try and keep your brush at the same angle, leaving nice even gaps. Again, we can always cover this up with yellow, so don't worry. Don't even have to be exactly even, as you can see here on this testimony. Once the weathering's all done, you can barely notice it. I know hazard stripes can be quite daunting for a newbie. They're quite daunting for me as well. Just crack on in the knowledge that we can always just tidy it up. It may take some time, but we'll get there in the end. Whilst you're tidying up, we can also add more detail onto these stripes. Take the sharp tip of a brush and just scratch away at the black lines with yellow paint. This will add a nice chipping effect. And once we dirty this mini up, it will leave a really nice weathered effect. Keep the scratches random, constantly going at a different angle at every scratch. Now just simply paint your weapons. I'm using Lead Belcher for the main gun and Iron Warriors for the magazine. Once you've painted all the weapons, move on to the bodysuits. I'm using Abaddon Black to paint this in, but you can use any other black. Don't forget to paint the exposed sleeves and this small area around the back. Although it's not strictly a bodysuit, it leaves a nice gap when the mini's all weathered up and finished. Before we move on to the next step, make sure you cover any decals in a matte varnish. Once we've got all the base coats down, it's time to add some winter streaking grime. Now, because this gets messy, we're going to need some paper towels and some cotton buds, as well as some odorless thinner and some latex gloves. Simply coat the mini in the streaking grime. You have a lot of time to work with this, so don't worry about it ruining your mini. To clean up, all we need to do is get a cotton bud, soak it in odorless thinner, and simply wipe away at the streaking grime. Be very careful with this, don't apply too much pressure, barely any pressure. You could add an extra layer of matte varnish across the whole mini just for that added protection, but I'm not doing that because I'm a moron. To get the streaking effect, we're just going to take an old brush with many loose threads, and we're just going to wipe away at the streaking grime, leaving these trails. Again, it's all just completely random. You can use a standard sharp brush if you want and just draw the lines in yourself, but this is a fast and easy way of doing it. You can make this as dirty or clean as you want it. I quite like the dirty, worn look, but it's completely up to you how dirty you want it. If you do want some more dirty streaks, don't apply the streaking grime again, just use whatever we've got laying around. Simply because this stuff already has thinner inside of it, so we don't have to do that step again. So this is an example of a more cleaned up version, but still giving it those streaking lines. We are going to put these lines on the hazard stripes, but try and tidy them up a bit more just to keep that yellow shining through. With any chaff units, we're simply just going to give them a nice coat of the odorless thinner and just soak up every little bit of streaking grime. This is almost like a wash in Agrex Earth shade, it's simply just to darken the tones in the recesses. So we're going to do exactly the same with the spider walkers, the only difference being that we're going to leave a lot of grime on the bottom of the legs, just to simulate a dirt effect. You can have a lot of fun with these spider walkers because they're a very big canvas. You can weather them as much as you want or as little as you want. As you can see here, I've weathered it quite a fair bit, scratching off a lot of areas around the doors and any of the little angles on the sides. Anywhere you'd see wear and tear, people climbing in and out or bumping off of objects. We're going to do the Nacked Alban a little bit differently. So we're not going to use winter streaking grime, but standard streaking grime. The recipe for this is the same as my Wilder theme that I entered into the Grimdark Compendium's Forest Freaks competition. He didn't win, but he did get an honourable mention. A lot of people did want to know the skin recipe for this, so here it is. So make sure your minis are all cleaned up and the odorless thinner has dried, and then we'll be using Plaguebearer Flesh just to cover any of these spikes on the minis. You can use Skeleton Horde if you want a darker effect. Once they're all in, we're going to be working on that pale skin effect. All we need is some pallid witch flesh, thinned to a very nice glaze as you can see here. And then we're just going to go over any of the open areas on the skin, like on the neck or the biceps, triceps. Avoid doing the hands or the feet, we just want to leave them dirty. It's super simple and leaves a really nice effect. So it's up to you from now if you want to go back in and add any highlights where you deem necessary, or you can just leave as it is. It's a pretty much bang on effect. So now the only thing left to do is the basing. Now I'm not 100% happy with these bases, but if you want to know how I did it, it's a layer of cork on the base and some AK Terrain wet ground, as well as some AK Interactive snow sprinkles. You can add the snow sprinkles on as the wet ground is drying, just to give that muddy snow kind of effect, but I left it about 20 minutes before adding mine. That meant I got muddy snow in the recesses, as well as some nice white snow on the top layers. Again, I'm not 100% happy with this. This is my first time doing any kind of snow basing, so we live and we learn, and hopefully we'll improve in the future. So what I'm doing here now is just getting a wet brush and just dabbing in the snow sprinkles to kind of give it that mushy look. If you have any tips and tricks for snow basing, then please leave them in the comments because I'd really like to know how to improve on this. So the final things to do was to get some PVA and stick down some Winter Dead static grass from Hobby Round, as well as some winter tufts from the Army Painter. And then we're pretty much done. Although it seems quite daunting, this is quite a fast process. I managed to get the whole thing built, chipped, weathered and painted, all in the space of a weekend. Well, that's not entirely true because I haven't done the giant Panzer IV mech. The reason for that is I'm just going to devote a little bit more time to that compared to the others, as it's going to be a giant centerpiece for the army. If you found anything in this video useful, Please drop a like and subscribe if you want to see more. I've been the Bloody Mama, and you've been wonderful. I'll catch you next time. Peace.